Welcome everyone, this is AndresRestart, and today we are talking about how Nintendo better not get rid of the Joy-Cons. So when I say this, I'm not trying to argue that the Joy-Cons are my favorite controller ever. They are not. I actually mostly play with the typical Switch Pro controller, but the reason I do that is because I tend to play in TV mode. But there are times when I play in handheld mode, and there are times when I detach the Joy-Cons depending on the game and the circumstance. And I think this is really important, so if Nintendo were to get rid of this, I think it would be quite a big problem. And so I'd like to go into more detail on that today. But before going forward, let me remind you all that we are currently aiming for a goal of 40,000 subscribers. So if for whatever reason you're watching this and you don't enjoy Nintendo news and theory-based discussions, then don't subscribe and hit that notification bell. So the reason I felt this was important to discuss today is because there has been a conversation about the Joy-Cons not really being needed, them not really being used, and I don't think this is fair to say in the slightest. I think the Joy-Cons are actually extremely important to the overall success for the Nintendo Switch. So one of the things that I think is amazing about the Switch is that it has the ability to be something you can play in TV mode, as I'd like to play, but also when you want to go elsewhere and take your experience immediately and seamlessly, you can. And the Joy-Cons do facilitate that. But then there's also tabletop mode, and I think tabletop mode is something that's nice to have as well, and with a bigger screen, it's even more useful. And that's what we're hearing about the Switch 2, is that it's going to have a bigger screen, an 8-inch panel. And I think there's actually something really cool, and also very Nintendo, to have two controllers right outside of the box. It functions as one when you're playing your typical mainline games, but for a lot of party-like games, a lot of multiplayer games, right out of the box, you have this pair of controllers that can function as two as opposed to one in certain circumstances, and it works really well for things like Mario Kart, Smash Brothers, games like Overcooked or Snipper Clips. There's a lot of things that it works for. And so what I'm ultimately trying to get at here is that one of the big successes of the Switch is that it has this variable form factor that works in so many different environments that appeals to so many different people, which allows it to reach such a large audience. And, there's a lot of people who have a Switch, so obviously something's working there. If you were to get rid of the Joy-Cons, you are hampering that ability. The Joy-Cons give the Switch so much more options. But even going beyond the multiple environments the Switch can sort of fit in thanks to the Joy-Cons and its hybrid portable nature, there are a lot of gameplay experiences that would no longer be possible if Nintendo were to do away with the Joy-Cons. A lot of gameplay experiences that were fairly successful on the Switch, like Nintendo Switch Sports. Having motion control games like that wouldn't really work with just a Pro controller. You need those individual Joy-Cons that you can swing around like a bat or a golf club. Or how about something like Ring Fit Adventure, where you can package in this Pilates ring and then the Joy-Cons attach, and it gives you so many options. You can run and do different exercises. This is possible because of the Joy-Cons. Or here's another example. Look at the Nintendo Labo line. They have VR options, they have options where you can access some game dev features, you can build little pianos or little guns or cart machines. There's so many things you can do in Nintendo Labo. It wouldn't be possible without the Joy-Cons. And all these games I've mentioned, Nintendo Labo, Ring Fit Adventure, Switch Sports, they've all seen pretty strong success, sales in the millions. So without the Joy-Cons, you would be foregoing all of these unique experiences where they sell millions of copies, and then also the potential for more unique experiences like that. And also, as I mentioned earlier, you're foregoing cooperative play right out of the box, which is something that Nintendo loves to do, this idea of multiplayer family fun. It would be an anti-Nintendo move to get rid of the Joy-Cons. You'll be losing a lot of the uniqueness behind the Switch and all the things it can do. Now, in full fairness, we don't know exactly what the Switch 2 is going to be. It's possible that Nintendo will be making some sort of dramatic departure from the Switch where Joy-Cons will no longer matter. But odds are, it's going to be essentially a newer version of the Switch. There may be some additional innovations or gimmicks, but it's still gonna be mostly the same. Everything we've heard, all the reports, all the indications has suggested that it's essentially another hybrid console. And so I think the Joy-Cons still make sense. Even if you don't want to believe the rumors and reports, historically speaking, Nintendo always follows up their great successes with a similar console, and they see how that one goes and they adjust afterwards. So there's little reason to think that Nintendo will be going away from the extremely successful Nintendo Switch. But while I don't think it makes sense for Nintendo to go away from the Joy-Cons, I do think the Joy-Cons are in need of improvements. Joy-Con drift has to go. If you're unfamiliar with Joy-Con drift, then you're really lucky, because a lot of people have had to deal with the Joy-Cons breaking down over time, some more quickly than others, and what happens is that the control sticks start to drift. They show inaccuracy. You might be walking straight and all of a sudden you start veering left and you're not doing anything. And sometimes, there can be just little connection issues that you can resolve. This happens in games all the time, but when it happens all the time and it can't be fixed, you got a Joy-Con drift problem. That control stick is broken. And this has happened quite frequently. Most Switch players have suffered from some level of Joy-Con drift, myself included. I definitely think they need to look at other options for their control sticks and make them a bit more sturdy, and I'm sure Nintendo can do that. There's a lot of different ways they can go about doing this. There are patents for that. I kind of expect them to make them a bit more sturdy this time around. Now, something I think they can probably get rid of is the IR functionality of the Joy-Cons. Now, yes, the IR functionality was used in some of the experiences for Nintendo Switch, but I don't think those experiences would not have existed without the IR functionality. They would have simply been a little different. We still would have gotten Nintendo Labo, we still would have gotten 1-2 Switch. They would have just been slightly different experiences, and the cost of the Joy-Cons would have been a bit cheaper. So, I think they should get rid of this feature. It's a hardly used feature that many people will not miss. But I think what a lot of people would prefer is if we were to get perhaps analog triggers, maybe improved rumble, something more comparable to the PlayStation 5 controller. I understand that the Joy-Cons and the Switch Pro controller already have HD rumble, so they were improving upon rumble during the Switch generation, but it's something that wasn't used too often by developers, and what's been accomplished with PlayStation 5 is even better, so I hope they come up with something that compares to that. And also something really cool about the PS5 controller is that it has force feedback or resistance, so when you can press the triggers, depending on the experience, you can feel extra resistance there. So if they can fit that into the Joy-Cons, as opposed to just a random IR feature that doesn't really work across the board, I think that would be a really nice improvement. Something else I think is worth noting is that we've heard about this Switch having a bigger screen, this Switch 2, an 8-inch screen. If it's a bigger screen, that may imply a bigger console. If it's a bigger console, that may also suggest that the Joy-Cons that attach at the sides may be a bit bigger as well. Now, I wouldn't mind a slightly bigger controller. I know everyone has different sizes of hands, and some people may be concerned about the controllers being a lot bigger, but I don't think the Joy-Cons would need to be made a lot bigger, just a little bit bigger. And that might actually make it easier to fit in better rumble and other features like that, and perhaps even having a situation or an environment where the sticks are less likely to break. I actually think a bit more heft to the controller might also improve the perspectives of people on playing with the Joy-Cons individually when it comes to multiplayer games. Typically, when I'm playing a multiplayer game, I'd rather just have a typical controller. I feel like when I'm using the Joy-Cons on their own separately, to me it feels like a bit of a hampered experience. But if the controllers were a little bit bigger, I might not feel the same way. And perhaps they could even redesign those SL and SR buttons. So I'm actually excited for the future of the Joy-Cons because I think they are something essential to what the Switch formula is, and I think there's a lot of ways they can improve, and I'm looking forward to seeing what they do with these on the Nintendo Switch 2. So yes, I would be totally surprised of instead of improving upon the Joy-Cons and making them better, Nintendo just got rid of them entirely and made the Switch 2 less of a unique, interesting system. But what do you all think? Let me know in the comments below. This is AndresRestart. Thank you so much for listening and watching, and I'll see you all really soon. Take care. Bye.